Merriam-Webster defines futility as the quality or state of being futile. Futile meaning serving no useful purpose. Many people have felt that their life is futile or without purpose. So it probably wouldn't surprise you that we have art that kind of explores these feelings, these very same feelings. So take our first piece of art, for example. 80 years ago, Albert Camus, a French philosopher, author, and playwright, wrote the play The Misunderstanding, or Le Malentendu in French. Sometimes it's published under the title of Cross Purpose. So this play in its 3 acts depicts the story of a family that struggles with communicating, and it ends in total destruction. So I'm going to be discussing this play in detail, so if you'd like to not be potentially spoiled on an 80-year-old play, feel free to skip ahead by this amount of time that I put on the screen. But I do have a link to the translated copy of the play in the description for those who would like to read it. So this play tells the story of a mother and daughter. The daughter's name is Martha, who own an inn, and they murder rich solo travelers. So they get a new lodger who they don't know is their long lost son / brother. His name's Jan. They had lost contact with Jan like 20 years prior. Martha and the mother, they begin to plot to kill the new lodger. While this lodger, who is Jan, hopes to be able to hint at him being their missing brother / son, he's hoping that they recognize him and he's able to be the prodigal son who returned to help his family. He doesn't come out right out and say that he is the long lost son. He just hopes to hint at it and get to kind of probe his mother and sister into remembering who he is and that he exists and recognize him for who he is. So in all of this, while both the mother and daughter, so both the mother and Martha at one point, they do actually start to second guess their decision to kill Jan. So this particular travel, in one conversation though, that the sister has with Jan, she makes up her mind because she hears about the life that she dreamed of living, about when she hears his stories of him, of where he was the past 20 years. And so after she hears that, she sort of sets her plan in motion. They drug him and they throw him in the river. The next day, they find his passport, and upon realizing who he was, they all kind of lose out on their own dreams, in like their own right. So the son who dreamed of like returning to his family and being able to help, who's now no longer alive, he lost his life. There's the mother who desired to be able to rest and not kind of get caught up in these killings with her daughter. She's not able to do that. And then also, like, after finding out she killed her own son, she threw herself into the river as well. And then there's the sister, Martha, who no longer is able to achieve her dream because she was confronted about killing her brother by her brother's wife, who she did not know was present. So, like, in this play, Martha, who's the daughter, talks a great deal about how she feels as though the life she has had to live has been without purpose. And that she's always dreamed of leaving, and she was aspiring for a reality that was not her own. She dreamed of seeing the sun. She grew up like where spring was but maybe a few flowers. She wanted to see the sand, the beach, to live by the sea. And so she felt as though because she dreamed of like leaving her reality, she felt as though things did not matter. In fact, in one of her monologues, she says, "We've all been fooled. We hear the summons, we obey the call. It might be love, it might be the sea, and all for what? What good does it do us? The whole thing's ridiculous, laughable. Your husband knows that now. He has his answer. There's only one home for all of us, and that's unspeakable, but we all end up there, lined up together." Now, this was in conversation she was having with the wife. And so Martha, in talking about that futility, is actually not unlike a character in our next piece of art. So our next work of art that does a good job of exploring like these feelings of futility is none other than Oscar-winning Everything Everywhere All at Once. So this film came out in 2022, and it depicts another family that is also struggling with communicating with each other. So if you haven't seen the movie, because it's still relatively new, I'm going to give my best spoiler-free description of the movie, so that you're able to kind of better follow along. Because I do want you to go watch this movie if you haven't already. It is that good. So this movie follows the story of Evelyn, who is played by Michelle Yeoh, as she goes on an adventure. And in this adventure, she utilizes the multiverse to fight against people who are out to get her, and she is assisted by a multiverse variant of her husband, Wayman, to defeat a great evil, which actually turns out to be led by a multiverse variant of her own daughter, Joy, that goes by Jobu, and so I'll probably be using Joy and Jobu almost interchangeably when I talk about them going further. So during this movie, discussions of the futility of existence is discussed. So it is discussed heavily by Joy in particular. So it's really interesting that it's the daughter in both situations. But this is very heavily discussed by Joy, or Jobu. So not unlike Martha from the play that we were talking about before, Jobu talks about the futility of existing, saying things like, God, please, we're all so stupid. Small, stupid little humans. It's like our whole deal. And then there's also this conversation that Jobu has with Evelyn, where Jobu says, and then we find out that the earth is revolving around the sun, which is just one sun out of a trillion suns, and now look at us, trying to deal with the fact that all of that exists in one universe out of who knows how many. Every new discovery is just a reminder. And then Evelyn responds, we're all small and stupid. And then Jobu says, who knows what great new discovery is coming next to make us feel like even smaller pieces of shit. So yeah, these feelings of everything being meaningless, of nothing you do matters, nothing, like everything is pointless almost, is actually not new. And it's not new at all. It's not new. Like, you can see it evidence in the play Le Malentendu, or The Misunderstanding. And it's not a feeling that you're alone in feeling. And this is evidenced by like the critical acclaim of Everything Everywhere All at Once. Act 3, my personal thoughts. So this episode was actually quite interesting to me as I began writing it. So I knew a bit about philosophy, especially the philosophy of existentialism, which is kind of what a lot of this falls under. So this, for those who don't know, existentialism is a type of philosophy that explores the issue of human existence. So, however, I will say it was in preparing for this particular episode that I was able to learn more about absurdism, which is a branch of existentialism, and it explores, or at least it says, that the universe is irrational and meaningless. And so the main philosopher for that philosophical branch of existentialism is actually Albert Camus. So the same person who wrote the play we were discussing earlier, he's also the father of that particular branch of philosophy. And what's really interesting is that like that philosophy, I think, ultimately describes Martha, so the daughter from the play, and also Jobu, or Joy, the daughter in the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. So they both felt as though life was meaningless, and those feelings of like life being meaningless, life being pointless, those are kind of ultimately what fueled their actions. So something I found really interesting as well is that when you look at both of these pieces of art, the three main characters actually kind of mirror each other. So the mother in the play and Evelyn in the movie, they both kind of desired rest, or at least to like not keep struggling. Then there's Martha in the play and Joy, or Jobu, in the movie. So these were both daughters who wanted their mother's love, and they also struggled with being able to communicate directly their needs to their mother. And then we have Jan and Wayman, both men who were kind, and they wanted to help their families, and they also wanted to know the love of their families. And like, while I will say those aren't the only similarities, feel free to check out both and then let me know in the comments some more similarities you found. I'd be really interested in hearing from what you all saw as well. But something else I will say that I found interesting was, as I mentioned before, these were both families that kind of struggled with communicating with each other. So like this lack of communication is actually, I'd say, ultimately what led to the seriousness and the gravity of the events that kind of took place in both stories. Interestingly, Albert Camus doesn't actually consider this play to be like a tragedy or a pessimistic work, even though given how everything kind of ended. He talks about how the reason behind everyone failing in the misunderstanding is because they failed to communicate properly. Like, so Jan did not come right out and say who he was. Martha was not able to come right out and say what she felt. The mother struggled with communicating her needs thoroughly, and that failure to communicate kind of ultimately led to the comeuppance everybody kind of got towards the end. But like Albert Camus kind of talked about how it's because they failed to communicate properly. They were not able to realize that their values are not dreamed up in isolation, but those values are often discovered communally. And so I will say this is where things differ when it comes to the movie. So towards the end of the movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Evelyn, Wayman, and Joy, they do actually listen to each other. They begin to listen to each other and they communicate with each other. And it is only after this that they are better able to like understand each other and get along better as a family. And so I think it was really cool how we were able to see in the movie what would have happened if the family in the misunderstanding had actually communicated, like came right out and possibly said what needed to be said on the front end so that they could work together to make sure everybody's needs were met on the back end, kind of like the family in Everything Everywhere All at Once. But yeah, I mean, feeling like life is futile is not new, and honestly, you're definitely not alone. And like, you've not been alone for years, especially considering like just how old the philosophy of absurdism is. Like, you're not alone in feeling like that. I felt that way before myself. I don't feel that way now, but it's a feeling that I understand. I do think, though, personally at least, I think it is beautiful, however, to desire a meaning for life so much that like you kind of go out and you look for one. Because that's often kind of where that futility comes from. It first comes from looking for that meaning. So maybe even in feeling that futility, it too can be an art like everything else. So, art that made me think. So this is our closing segment. If you can think of a cool, fun name for this segment, let me know in the comments. Because I would love to come up with a fun name. But this is art that made me think this week. So, the art that made me think this week was actually the song The Chicken by Bo Burnham. So, side note, I actually quite literally saw the outtake special this week. I didn't know that it was out. I didn't find out about it being out until this week, which is kind of ironic because I definitely heard the songs like around everywhere. Like, I heard the songs on TikTok and stuff, some of the songs that are in the outtakes, but for whatever reason, my brain was kind of registering it as, oh yeah, no, those are in Inside. You probably just fell asleep and didn't see those songs. Because quite frankly, in theory, I've watched a lot of movies kind of only in theory. So like, I've started a movie, sometimes I fall asleep in the middle, and then I wake up towards the end, and yeah, I would say, yep, all right, that's been watched. So yeah, there's actually quite a few movies I've only seen in theory. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. Art that made me think this week, the song Bo Burnham, The Chicken by Bo Burnham. So when I watched the outtakes, I actually really liked this song. Because honestly, something I think Bo did a really good job of capturing in the song was a question that I think often leads to that feeling of futility that we were discussing before. So I do think that like you can do things for years on end. You can wake up day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, doing things, the same thing for years. And then one day you ask yourself, is this all? Like, am I only supposed to be doing this day in and day out? Like, is there more out there that I can be doing? And it's like, I think that is kind of where the futility comes in. The pessimism that I feel like often can be found when it comes to futility lies in like that inaction, when you feel stuck doing the same thing over and over and over again, and it feels pointless and like meaningless. So something I like that Bo did is that he then went on to tell a story of her going off to find something new, to try something different. And something else I really love about the song is that it's a play on the age-old joke of why did the chicken cross the road? Because it is often a joke that like can be seen as something negative, because it's always it's always about her getting to the other side, often alluding to the chicken passing or not surviving crossing the road. But Bo flips it, and like he ponders, what if instead of thinking that she didn't make it, what if we chose to believe that she did make it? What if we chose to believe that good things could come after tough decisions or major life changes? Like, how would our lives look different if we chose to believe good things could come after making tough decisions or major life changes? But anyways, that's all I have for you today. Like, comment, subscribe, follow. I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for being. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.